Hello and welcome to Simon Says Artwork. In this video I'm going to be showing you a kind of a tutorial video on how to draw a pencil drawing of a calf whilst trying to show how to get depth and texture in the drawing. And this is a video that I made for a friend of mine while we were in the second year of university. I'm currently halfway through my third year, and this friend of mine left to go to another university, but at the time we'd kept a close friendship and we wanted to stay in touch so that we could exchange ideas and show each other our work. And this was something which I made for her to show her how I approached getting some, like I said, just some texture and some depth, because she asked me how to show depth in an image, and that's what I was trying to show in this. And I found it the other day, so I recorded it quite a while ago, but I thought it'd be quite interesting to post. I hope you like it. So yeah, all right, let's take a look. Continuing from this part of the drawing, you can see there's a lot that's still left white on the page, so that's why it looks so flat in certain areas. So my main focus is going to be adding tone to the neck, on especially the shadow side, and on the face. But as you can see from the photo reference, there's still reflected light on that side of the face, so I'm trying to be careful to avoid that. And a lot of the shading on the face is not a nice looking drawing, but it's literally a demonstration of a tonal study where you're just trying to close the gap between what you have on the page and what you see on the photograph tonally, so that shadow becomes the real dominated darker sections, and the midtones become more sensitive. So especially for the hair, I start to try to pick out certain shapes and carefully trying to block out certain areas and not leave it too cartoonish looking in just certain sections which are lighter than others. And then just these different pressure that you put on the pencil to get these certain marks and cuts into it. Still quite rudimentary at this level, but this area here I'm starting to shade in from the outside and doing upward contour oval like lines, and then I cut the shape differently on the side there because there is a transition going up towards the ear, so I start doing downward oval contour shading, which goes darker. And once I've covered that area, I'm really going to go back over to where I started doing those and do a bit of mid-tone shading to blend those in so that they don't stand out. Because if you're trying to give something the illusion of depth, you really need to cover up a lot of your work with this mid-tone. And you can just see from that close-up there the difference in greys just in certain sections. So if I were to take more time over this and be a lot more careful about the marks I'm making, then you can really render something quite realistically. But there are several things about this drawing that I would have taken more time on were it not a lesson. But here I'm just trying to cover certain areas with that mid-tone and sensitivity, so it's just rocking the pencil back and forth with slight bits of pressure when I feel that I've got an area that I can make marks on. These will be seen after everything else is covered, because these are now sensitive marks to create points of interest around these areas which aren't so densely covered with either hair or some sort of appendage coming out. So it's just points where soft mid-tone variation is quite powerful in the overall finish. Now at this point where I'm going for the hair that leads up the neck, the mane, I'm trying to commit to certain shadow areas where I feel like leading up the neck, if I can get in the darker marks now, then when I get in the mid-tone to make it look like a fluffy fur type texture, these will be softened by that shading, as opposed to, because I've tried it the other way where you do mid-tone and you build up mid-tone and get certain shadows and it becomes muddy, much like the face is quite a muddy mess at the moment, and I'm going to try and rectify that as I finish up the drawing. But at the moment I go up the neck with shadow, and then the mid-tone starts from that. If you can see on the photo reference, there is this lovely horizontal cuts back and forth from the shadow that's being cast, and you just it leans lovely to sort of change up those marks being directional marks. But then to blend that in as well, I'm doing a downward diagonal shading where I don't not like hatching. I'm keeping the pencil attached to the paper and just softening those, just so that they're not quite so heavy and feel so handmade, even though from zoomed out it's still a bit loose. But now I'm looking at the leg in the foreground and trying to darken that area. As much as it's lighter in the photo, it just exposes how much, if the hoof is white, then the rest of it isn't. The rest of it is just grey, even the neck that's in light, so that will have to be shaded as well. Getting some shine off the paper from the light in the room, so I apologise for that, but you can see that I'm just picking away at certain areas to make them darker, committing to certain marks and going down the mane there. But this is about as far as I got in the footage, and then you can see there's still a long way to go until you really do cover these areas. But unfortunately, because I, for the next session, didn't press record on the time lapse, this is just going to be a side-by-side comparison photo where I'll just try to show how far I got from this point. So on the next session, it was about an hour again, and I'd just darken the areas. So the one on the right is where I'm up to at the moment. And from this point onward, I'm going to make sure that I'm filming and have a time-lapse running so that we can really analyse what I'm doing to refine the finish. Okay, now I'm going to start looking to soften some of those parts of the shading where it's still pretty rough. I've added some tone, but I'm really going to look to transition that so that it's just softer and a bit more of a sensitive rendering of what fur is. And this is going to be, a big arching up and down all over the place, because all the tonal values shift together really. So when you darken one section, everything with it needs to adjust as well. Otherwise your lights may be just staying white, when you can see on the light side of the neck there I'm starting to add a bit of shading, and then going all the way back around. Anything that you notice that just needs adjusting. But I'd also remember to just take a break and have a coffee and just take a minute where you're not looking at the paper and you're not focusing on the reference photo, and you've just looked away from it for a minute, just giving your eyes a rest. And then when you've done that and you've had a sip of your brew and you look back at the picture, look through your eyelashes, and you can immediately see tonally whether you've got things right. But what jumps out at me is this leg in the foreground. I mean, it looks like an elephant's trunk. So what I do is I've taken an eraser, and it's an old one, but it's just a cheap one, so I've started going above that leg and I chip into the darker stomach area, and I'm lucky. Usually that doesn't work, but because it does, I may as well touch up some other sections, because there are certain tweaks that I will make now, just so that I'm happy with the finished thing. So this eraser, it's a cheap one, but I'm going to apply it to the outside ring of the eye, because that could just be a bit thinner and will be more effective. Also, I'm going to take some strands of hair, I think, and rub those out, just push some lines through, cup that bottom of the hoof, and then also this nub here could have a bit more space. And then from that point on, I can then happily continue with the form. If there's anything else, I'll do that on the way. So going in here and just giving it a good bit of room there so that I can then start to establish what type of blocking I need for the leg behind it, because obviously that now tonally needs to meet what's already there, and then maintain the lighter sections as untouched, so making sure not to go over that little force field of space I've still left for that little nub until I shape it properly. So even though I'm holding the pencil quite low down here, I'd rather hold it higher up, but I'm being very gentle about adding that mid-tone. And here I'm going to start to try and push some lines through the shading I've already got to make some nice wispy hair. And it wasn't initially what I planned to do, but I've also seen that the bottom of the kind of muzzle, mouth, could do with some shading. So I'm going to go in and start to just darken certain sections again and make sure that it's all pushing forward to a, something which has a bit of depth to it, and it actually just makes sense when you look at it as far as where it's being lit, and trying to pay attention to where things are darker and lighter on the photo above anything, that's so bold. It's all the subtleties now in the mid-tone that I'm trying to pay attention to, and also trying to, soften all the shading that I have there by going over that light section of the neck, going over the face and touching up the areas of shading that are still mid-tones and, mid-range mid-tones as well, and then darker. But these layers of graphite on top will all add to this final, piece. So there, just being careful, and I've used a 3H there to add in that end of the hoof, which isn't especially light, but it's a different tone of mid-tone mark, because it's a harder pencil nib. It's it just doesn't have that same colouring to it that the darker stuff does, and you can see it here when I start working on the background area, and it's just literally just holding the pencil quite high up, towards where an eraser would be, and trying to get little wispy marks. But you can see the greys in the leg compared to the greys that I'm starting to apply here. I mean, these are the first few marks, so this is just to get the suggestion, and then I start to use that edge of the angle of the nib to shade a somewhat even mid-tone over everything, so that those marks are still visible on the left, but here on the right I'm just covering up sections and then going back over them again and layering up certain parts to make it look like bits of grass and just tufts here and there, and trying to make sure it's not too uniform, so cutting some things back and forth and try to avoid that look of hatching, so there's slight chaotic, arbitrary cuts of angles of different blades of grass. But tonally I'm paying attention to any kind of lighter and darker spots in the reference photo, because as much as you can really make this part up, it's nice to be guided by that. And once you've covered it, you've just got this separate space behind the animal so that it's now sunken into the page. And I do quite like the fact that all of the background is now covered with a grey, so that the light parts on the animal are the lightest. So I'm leaving it there. Okay, I hope you've learned something from that, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Bye. Okay, so that's the video done. And I think the drawing worked out okay. I would have done it differently this time. On reflection, I wouldn't have drawn it on a shiny print paper. I think that was because for lessons I would usually just get as many sheets of print paper as possible to show ideas, and then I just put it to the side and do another one, and really try to rapid fire go through concepts to try and illustrate what I was trying to get across technique wise, and just the theory behind certain practices. So that's why that was drawn on shiny paper, when really it would have been better on more matte textured paper. And I think I would have taken more time to plot out different aspects of the drawing. As you can see in the video, I had to rub out parts of the anatomy of the calf just to try and make it closer to the photo reference. But I thought as a video it was quite interesting to see the different stages. I put the video together differently than what I do these days. So hopefully you enjoyed that. And if you did, please leave a like on the video and put a comment down below to let me know what you think. And subscribe to the channel if you can. I mean, it sounds like something where you've got a subscription and you have to pay, but honestly it's harmless, it's painless. I've done it to several channels for the first time this year, and because for some reason I never used to subscribe to YouTube channels. I'd just go on YouTube, check something out, and then I'd know that the algorithm would spit back out that same YouTube creator's content. But on reflection, it really doesn't hurt to press the subscribe and ring the bell. It's literally just on the bottom tab where it says subscriptions, you'll get a little red dot where it's just letting you know that something's been uploaded. It's not a real imposition, you know. So if you could, please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell, and that way you can keep up with the uploads, or you can just completely ignore it. But I'd appreciate the subscription. And also, I think that's it actually. It's like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell. The last thing is, I'll see you in the next video.